Good morning. It is. Good morning. I'm Kevin Jones with SkyHigh Networks. Thank you so much for joining us. We are here today to talk about cloud security, and we'll make this a lively conversation. Before we do that, I'd like to give some introductions to these gentlemen and have them give a quick 1-minute bio on themselves, and we'll kick things off. Sean, please.
I always pick the wrong seat. I always go first. Good morning. I'm Sean Kelley. I'm the CISO for the Environmental Protection Agency. Before that, I was a senior executive at the Veterans Affairs down in Washington, D.C. Did some time in consulting, and I retired from Navy medicine, where I was a health IT officer for 20 years.
I'm Dave Summitt, the CISO for H. Lee Moffitt Cancer Center and Research Institute in Tampa, Florida. I represent the healthcare sector, so I'm looking forward to hearing some feedback on anyone in the healthcare sector.
I'm Rajiv Gupta, co-founder and CEO of SkyHigh Networks. I'm the same guy who spoke earlier, so my bio hasn't changed very much.
You got one more speech under your belt.
Right, exactly.
So before we begin, show of hands, if you please. How many folks in the room are concerned with and or aware of shadow IT in your organization, defined as individuals who are using your assets, whether it's the network on their own device or your devices and your network, to access cloud services you're not aware of? Show of hands. Good, medium. Others are not concerned about that. That's cool. Maybe
actually, ask the question, how many people are not concerned about it?
He's the IC for sure. He's on SIPRNet. Okay, so other question for you. How about sanctioned services, defined as those services the organization is investing in? Office 365, Salesforce, Box, and so forth. How many organizations, by show of hands, please, are either interested in, have invested in those services? A fair amount. Okay, so about half of each. Interesting. And the rest are press, maybe. I don't know. Okay, so well, let's start with shadow IT. I think first of all, a couple statistics for you. This CASB space, Cloud Access Security Broker, is new, so if you haven't heard of it yet, you will considerably. And really what it's focused on is a few different attributes. First is defining what's actually happening out there in the wild. In our infrastructure, individuals are accessing services, be it LinkedIn or Twitter or Facebook, all considered cloud services, or something a little more nefarious that they may not be aware of. So what we have found in our experience is that the average organization, could be DoD, could be Civ, could be a commercial enterprise, uses well over 1,400 unidentified or uncategorized cloud services in their organization. And they've got the full spectrum of next-gen proxy and firewall and SOC and TIC and CAPS technology, depending on where you work. So we're finding this across the board. So the idea here is to get some different perspectives of how these organizations are handling this challenge. So what I'd like to do, if I may, is since you already called yourself out, I'll do it one more time, Sean, since you're next to me. Ask you to kind of give your perspective, number one, on your take on shadow IT, whether it's a risk at EPA, if you see it systemically, and then how you're beginning to address that challenge.
Well, I think shadow IT is a risk across the federal government, probably in a lot of civilian organizations too. There's never enough IT funds. There's always too many restrictions from an agency or an organization, and people have needs. And so if I can't get IT to do it, or it's not a priority for the organization, then I'm going to go out and do it on my own. And that's where we end up. But when we do that, then we have something that may not be configured or standardized properly, or is not an enterprise approach to go into our environments. And that causes a lot of problems, not just from a security standpoint, but also from an automation capability, but also from an operational capability. And those are things that I've struggled with as a deputy CIO, and I struggle with as a CISO as well, no matter what organization you're part of. So I think a lot of things is that when we looked at the cloud, we took those as a service, and a lot of folks in the federal sector took the approach, well, if it's cloud, it's not IT, it's a subscription. And I've seen that used many times, and that's concerning from a lot of standpoints, because you at that point lose control or lose oversight on what's being put out there. And it's always a concern. You want to know, as we move to data security, we want to know where our data is going and where it's being stored. And we also want to be able to use that data to synchronize and collate with other data so that we can really come to an intelligence standpoint of what our data is telling us. So what we're doing is we're looking at it. We're trying to build better partnerships. We're trying to build better governance. Fatara helped a lot with this. You know, you can't purchase these things unless you come through IT. So that's given us some more sight. But, you know, Fatara and a lot of agencies, coming from the VA where we were the model from a centralized appropriation of $4.2 billion per year, we still had shadow IT though. You know, there's always ways around these things. And so we take a look, but to me, it's being a partner, showing that you're trying to find the solutions. But still, I guarantee there's going to be shadow IT out there. And so something like a CASB that can give you that level of visibility is very attractive to us because, at least in the cloud environments, we know what's out there.
Thank you.
No problem.
Dave, what's your perspective?
From a healthcare perspective, it's a scary thing to think that data is leaving your organization and going someplace in the cloud without someone knowing it's there. Our facility, our organization is a little unique in that we, majority of our organization is research. So when I got there a couple of years ago, the first thing I learned was we have about 4 petabytes of information in research alone. And that is increasing on the average of about a half a petabyte to a petabyte a year right now. And when I hear statistics that anywhere from 5 to 25% of an organization's data isn't on the corporate network in healthcare, that's a lot of data that's sitting someplace I don't know about. And that really scares me. And when I get board level interest asking me what I'm doing to protect the data, whether it be patient information or whether it's intellectual property, the first thing that I let them know is that we are working hard to identify where this data resides. We are an organization that does use cloud in some situations, and we are in other situations, depending on our data classification, we will not allow it. The thing about the cloud from our perspective is that there's a lot of things to consider. And one of the things that many organizations overlook is the legal aspect of where that data is. Thanks to one name brand cloud service out there I won't name, they have a campaign that will target organizations based on their email address. And one day I received a report from a salesperson saying, we have 125 people with Moffitt emails that are using our system. I think it's time for us to talk. And they happened to send me every one of them, and I simply wrote them back and said, thank you very much, they won't tomorrow. So we immediately started shutting those services down from a network perspective because, number one, it was not a sanctioned application for us. Number two, we have situations in intellectual property rights where the data could be leaving the organization and we won't know it until that person leaves the organization. And all of a sudden, we've lost intellectual property and we don't even know it. So from that perspective, everybody should be considering getting your legal team involved or your compliance department involved, because the biggest thing that I have had when I've had data in the cloud is when we have an investigation, most cloud services will not allow a third-party investigative service to come in and do forensics. That's a big issue when you're trying to locate where your information is and how it got breached.
So, two quick comments, Sean, to reinforce something that you mentioned. So one aspect of shadow IT is a security aspect. Another aspect which you described as well is, if I don't know what my employees need, how can I provide something to them, right? If I don't tell them, hey, use OneDrive, for example, because that's the corporate approved or the sanctioned service, they'll use whatever service makes them productive, right? And I'm therefore making the shadow IT problem worse by not getting ahead of it. So that's the point you raised. The second point that you raised as well, this example that you mentioned, is an example of shadow IT where employees are using these services. And the problem there is that the free services are actually the scarier ones than the ones you're paying for. Because that developer has to feed his or her family, right? So they're going to make money somehow. And the way they make money very often is selling your information. Not in the sense of selling confidential data, but trying to get back to you and say, hey, subscribe to my service, or whatever the case might be. So sometimes the free services, the shadow free services, are actually scarier, than the ones that you're actually paying for. Right? So because once you subscribe to them, there's a contract and there are implications of that.
Yeah.
So the shadow IT problem is one that we need to get ahead of. For us to be more secure, for us to be a better partner to our own employees as well.
Yeah. And in having 125 users is pretty significant. I don't know how big your customer, population is, but 125 people is significant want or need. Mm-hmm. How did 125 people end up at this one service, right? And so then you have to get it into the governance process and start trying to talk about, what do we need to do? What is this need that's being unfilled? And how did they go ahead and do this, or why did they go ahead and do this is part of the conversation. And I think that's a great part about the visibility piece.
That's right. That's where it starts.
And that's how we're attacking it. You get into an organization, you find out that people have had free reign for a while, and in healthcare, they've had free reign for a long time. Now it's changing, and that paradigm and that culture shift of all of a sudden, you're not going to allow someone to do something is met with resistance. And it's up to us as the security professionals to begin having that discussion with your user base and giving them the reasons why we're interested in what they're doing with your data. And that's where I think we've gained the most acceptance is when we get out and my team gets out and talks to our users saying, we don't want to shut you down. We want to help you and we want to protect the data correctly. So you need to give us feedback in what you're expecting to use from, from that service so we can help you. And then at the same time, have the organization to begin building something that can either replace that cloud service that they can use or get your organization to buy into that cloud and have it from a corporate, an enterprise perspective account where you can control it a little bit better.
I want to pivot because we only have 20 minutes. We're trying to be respectful of time. Second piece is on the sanctions side. So historically, when you and I think of going to the cloud, it's me sitting here behind this protected shell, and I'm going out there, out into the wild, some place that's either safe or unsafe, depending on where I'm headed. That is known, as Rajiv indicated this morning, as kind of north-south traffic. We typically think of me going out from where I am that's safe to there, out to wherever that is. What we're seeing increasingly is this notion of east-west traffic. So increasingly, if you take Office 365 or Slack as an example, data is being created out there beyond the TIC, the SOC, the CAP, that's never seeing the enterprise. It's actually being created, a Word document as an example, being created and proliferated and shared out via link with some of our partners. Now there are some limited levels of controls, of course, for data proliferation and collaboration and things of that nature, but what happens when the traditional controls that we're used to are no longer as visible as we would hope them to be? Not that they're obsolete by any means, but that they're really not able to see this level of traffic. It's analogous to trying to catch a tuna from the shore. We've got to get out there into the deep to catch the tuna, whereas these are really kind of on the shore type technology. So feedback on that, David. Maybe I'll start with you this time. The question is, that was a statement. So the question would be, what's your take on this east-west paradigm where organizations like Microsoft and Slack are enabling cloud content to be created out there beyond the perimeter, and how you would control that?
Yeah, quite frankly, I'm not sure how you can control it other than awareness of your users. The key to a lot of my problems is that my users weren't aware that they should or shouldn't be doing something. And again, I bring that responsibility back into myself as the CISO and my organization to push that information out and help them understand what you should and shouldn't do with the different types of data. And I think it also comes back to the fact that your users should really understand, and every organization should have a data classification policy. What data will you allow that you don't care about out in the public realm, and what data do you care about if you happen to lose it or it gets breached that goes out? So I think it all comes back down to policies and governance and awareness, and that's the way I try to attack it.
Sean, you already have an Office 365 instance.
I do.
Azure, going to AWS perhaps?
I do. I agree with David. But dumb people do dumb things, and smart people do too. A few months ago, Amazon had a few hours of downtime, which is rare for them, and it was attributed to human error. And they've made adjustments, but it's inevitable at some point someone's going to do something. And so we'll never be able to control the user population completely. They're going to do things and they're going to put things out there. We have to figure out how to automate that. One of the attractiveness to the cloud that I like is it's standardized. It's configured properly. You can do automation across. There's not many of our environments that we won't fare if we push a button to automate something and we're going to break something. I've been in most environments where, just patching sometimes, we break stuff when we push it out. And so we've got to get to that place because, Kevin Mitnick was successful because people were trying to be helpful. That's why he was successful. Kevin Mitnick never really hacked anything. He social engineered a whole bunch. And so people will try to be helpful and they'll be taken advantage of and they will create documents and they will release them accidentally or intentionally. You got to have good policies. You got to have a good awareness program. But you also got to have that level of visibility that we've been talking about. Without that level of visibility, you don't even really know how to target those efforts. I've talked to companies that say, well, we can get your incident response teams focused on this much versus what they normally do this much. We've got to start looking at how do we use the tools with our people, with the training, with our policies. That's when we're going to really get into a stance that we can be successful. IT security is very, very expensive. And if we don't start to figure out how to couple our tools with our people, we're never going to make up this divide of the shortage we have in security professionals. We're just never going to be able to catch it. And so those are some of the things that I think.
Yeah, so 2 quick comments here as well. Sorry, the number 2 sticks with me today. The first one, I think, Sean, that you mentioned is that with cloud, we have the opportunity to do it right or do it better than we've done before because there are consistent set of mechanisms and standards and controls. And in fact, Jerry Brady, the CISO of Morgan Stanley, in a public keynote at FSI SAC, the Financial Services Conference, he said that until last year, Jerry, was the biggest opponent of cloud for security reasons. Today, I'm the biggest proponent of cloud for security reasons. Yeah. Because I finally realized I cannot invest as much as Microsoft and Salesforce, they invest in security. So I'm very happy for them to do the patches and the updates and manage the servers so that I can focus on the things that I care about, right, which is my data and my users. So I think that the shift in terms of how people view the cloud is changing and may be selective, it may take time. The other perspective, and David, to point to the comment you made is, actually this east-west traffic, this collaboration controls, collaboration capability these services have, is a good thing. That is one of the strengths of a 365. That's one of the strengths of Slack. If you try and take it away, you're essentially denuding that particular service. You're making it less effective. But that doesn't mean that you don't have control over it. And in fact, that's one of the things that, again, I don't want to make it sound like an advertisement, but that's one of the things that CASBs bring to the table, is that we are sitting in the cloud. So we have visibility through the APIs, the services exposed, to control your data as it moves in the east-west channel, right? So if you think about data loss prevention, DLP, which looks at the kind of data, looking at classifying data and so on and so forth, and saying, hey, this classification of data cannot be accessed by this kind of person or this kind of device, right? Those are the north-south controls. You can enforce the same kinds of controls on east-west traffic as well. So what that gives for you is the ability to use this service, this collaboration service, in its full form without making a subset that's not effective, but at the same time making sure you have all the controls you need such that you can gain the benefit of that without compromising security.
And just to add on to that, it's a paradigm shift. We can't look at how we've approached security for the last 20 years the same way with the cloud. But David and I had a great phone call. Well, all of us did. We had a great conversation. But it does. Now, when I say cloud, I'm talking about public clouds. Okay, I'm proprietary clouds, private clouds. I won't be as bold and say of what I want to accept. I look at cloud like I look at encryptions. I want publicly scrutinized clouds. I want publicly scrutinized encryptions. Right? You offer me a proprietary encryption. Thanks, but no thanks. Okay. But we have to look at forensics different. But our cloud providers have to be transparent as well. The government in healthcare, I can speak for both, are compliance very heavy. It's compliance on steroids. And we have to be able to attest as CISOs and CIOs to the compliance. And if we can't get that information, it's just another reason that the industry will delay going to the cloud. And it's an unneeded one, right? Now, I will tell you, I've had major data centers with PHI, PII in them. And if someone ever came to me and said, hey, I want your network configurations, I want to know your controls, I want to know everything you put in place, I'm like, man, you're out of your mind. You're not getting that. You are not getting that. So what we got to do is figure out what that looks like. How can I attest to compliance while they're also keeping the level of security that they need? Because if I was running this, but here's really the story, right? If Amazon gets hacked tomorrow and they have my data in it, I'm a line on that article, right? The story is going to be, is it safe to go to the cloud? That's the story. That's going to be what's going to dominate, right? Now I have to deal. Not that I care that not that I don't care that my data was now compromised, but that's part of it. We talked about fines with HIPAA, and that's what makes the healthcare industry come to the table and cooperate, right? It's a fact of life. That's kind of what people do, I still speed. I just deal with the speeding tickets as I get them, right? The laws haven't stopped me, right? My insurance premiums have stopped me, okay? But not the speeding tickets. So, that's why laws exist. That's why compliance exists, right? To make us comply. But we have to work on both sides of that equation. And, again, as a government person, that's what I think I got excited about when I heard about CASBs.
So I'm going to play just a little devil's advocate here just a minute.
I know you are.
And
And this is what we do.
we're getting the sign, just FYI, so
Okay.
we'll play quick devil's advocate.
We're real quick.
Sure.
So and this comes back to policies again. Policies they're not worth the paper they're printed on if they're not enforced policies. Speeding tickets, I'll guarantee you'll stop speeding the day they throw you in jail.
No.
He will speed away from jail.
We've been there, did that, but that was younger in my life before social media. Those records have been expunged.
Any other parting thoughts, Dave? Any other last words?
Actually, as we're going out in the roundtables, I think Kevin, I don't know if you have a point of view for people to think about as they talk amongst themselves.
No, please.
I think the thing that I'd like you to think about, please add to that, is cloud is inevitable, right? It's happening today in your organizations, in many cases with your approval, in many cases without your approval. So it's happening today already. And the second thing is, it is not bleak. We can get the visibility, we can get the controls we need, such that we can enable our lines of business, our employees, ourselves to be more productive by leveraging the services without compromising on the security we need. And so the question is from your perspective in your organizations, where are you in that journey and how do you make sure we get there such that you get the best of both worlds?
And I will say this, and then we're going to shift to tables. I didn't know about CASBs when I was asked to speak to this. I had no idea. But as I started preparing for this panel and looking at it, I just became very, very excited. And even this afternoon when I talk about getting, for the industry folks, getting folks into the cloud, it became something that excited me. I was like, this is really what we need. I got very excited about the possibilities. And so when I sat down with the team and really started to learn more, and still learning more, I think it's an exciting piece of the puzzle.
So with that, we're going to disperse, sit at the tables for 30 minutes or so and have a conversation about what we've heard today and where your cloud journey is. Thank you so much.
Just find an empty seat?
Yeah, find an empty seat.
Okay.